Have you ever felt like you're stuck? Like there's this invisible chain holding you back, even when you sort of know you could break free? Or maybe you've wondered why some people seem to just, effortlessly achieve what you really struggle with. What if the biggest obstacles aren't actually outside you, but they're built by your own mind? Could change in just a few thoughts, maybe a few tiny actions, completely reroute your life's journey?
You're now entering deep dialogues, where real conversations spark real insight.
Two minds, one idea at a time.
Let's go deeper.
Today, we're doing a deep dive into an excerpt from a really insightful ebook. It's called Success Why You Fail, Where Others Succeed, 5 Life-Changing Personal Development Tips You Wish You Knew, by Thibaut Maurice.
Yeah, and this author, he really takes a look at those fundamental questions you just posed. He digs into these core principles and concepts that honestly challenge our assumptions about ourselves and what's even possible. We're talking about things like how we build our reality, the nature of our thoughts, how we define success for ourselves, the power of taking responsibility, and the practical magic of actually setting goals. We've got the source material right here, and we're going to unpack these foundational ideas together.
Okay. And our mission really is to pull out the most valuable nuggets from this text, those insights that can maybe be shortcuts to being more well-informed. And to help you see how these powerful principles might apply in your own life, it all seems to start with a pretty radical idea the author presents.
Right. That first big one is, your current reality is never reality and can always be changed.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit because, wow, this really flips the script on how we tend to see the world, doesn't it? The source kicks off with this idea that our reality isn't some fixed, objective thing out there. It's something we actively create inside our own heads. It brings in Maxwell Maltz, psychocybernetics. And his point that we act and feel based on what we imagine is true about ourselves and our environment.
Exactly. And those limitations you might feel, they're often not. They're not innate, they're built. They usually stem from how we've interpreted things that happened in the past, and those interpretations solidify into limiting beliefs. I mean, think about a little kid learning to walk. They fall down constantly, right? That's actually the subconscious mind at work.
Right.
The author calls it a powerful goal-seeking device.
Yeah.
And it needs that trial and error, that failure, to learn and adapt. But as adults, so many of us become terrified of falling, metaphorically speaking. So we never give our brain the data it needs to figure things out.
Right. And that fear, combined with our own really personal filter from past events, makes what feels realistic incredibly subjective. What seems totally possible to one person, their reality, can look completely impossible to someone else. It's all colored by how we interpret things, and this is crucial, what we choose to focus on.
Precisely. Your reality, essentially, is the result of how you interpreted everything that's happened, plus where you direct your attention right now. And we only ever perceive like a tiny fraction of all the information out there.
Okay, so if our reality isn't fixed, if it's constructed, how does the author suggest we start building a more, let's say, empowering one?
Well, the two main levers, according to the source, are 1, cultivating optimism, and 2, actively identifying and then deconstructing those limiting beliefs.
Optimism. Okay, for some people that can sound a bit, naive, like just putting on rose-tinted glasses or ignoring real problems.
Yeah, and the author is clear on this. It's not about denying facts. It's really a deliberate choice about where you put your mental energy. I mean, in any situation, any day, you can find an infinite number of positive or negative things to dwell on. Pessimism, the source points out, is almost never productive. Being optimistic means, okay, acknowledge the difficult stuff, sure, but choose not to waste your precious time and energy focusing solely on it. From this viewpoint, worry is seen as basically irrational.
And our own wiring sort of works against us here, doesn't it? We have this negativity bias. Our brains are just hypersensitive to threats. Great for survival back in the day, maybe less helpful now. Studies even show you need something like a 5-to-1 ratio of positive to negative interactions just to keep a relationship healthy. It really takes conscious effort to tilt those scales.
It absolutely does. And the source gets really practical here, giving actionable steps for retraining your focus towards optimism. And it doesn't pull any punches either. For instance, it suggests cutting out or drastically reducing TV time. The argument is that TV often manipulates emotions. It steals time you could use better. It dictates thoughts and distorts reality by constantly pushing fear and negativity. The author even mentions a friend whose struggles seem directly linked to constantly consuming negative news. The point isn't, fix the whole world. The source says, take responsibility for changing yourself.
So less news in general, then? Is that the idea?
Yeah, basically. Reduce news consumption because it's often overwhelmingly negative. gives you a skewed view, maybe just check in weekly instead of daily. Or if you do watch, immediately follow it up with something inspirational. Another really key area is who you spend your time with. The source brings up Jim Rohn's famous observation. You tend to become the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most. So spending less time with negative people is a direct way to shift your own outlook.
Makes sense. Surround yourself with positivity.
Right. And on the flip side, intentionally start your day with inspirational stuff, reading, videos, whatever works for you. Zig Ziglar's quote is mentioned, saying motivation is like bathing. You need it daily. And the 5th practical step involves using positive affirmations and visualization every day. Repeating I am statements for maybe 5 minutes, framing them positively, avoiding words like not. But crucially, the source says you need to support these affirmations with real-life experiences. You have to question your negative beliefs. Are they always true? Find examples in your own life where you actually do possess the quality you're affirming.
Oh, I like that nuance. It makes affirmations less like wishful thinking and more about digging up evidence against the limiting belief.
Exactly. It also suggests visualizing yourself already being the person you want to be, really feeling the emotions. Your mind, the source points out, has a hard time telling the difference between vividly imagined experiences and real ones. And adding physical movement can help too, because your body, your thoughts, your words, they're all interconnected.
Okay, this idea of actively shaping our internal state. It brings us to reframing situations, right? The source talks a lot about training yourself to find the positive angle, or at least a useful one.
Right. The fundamental first step is acceptance. What is. Don't fight reality. The author argues that reality itself is neutral. It's your interpretation that creates the problem. Fighting reality, he says, is like empowering your worst enemy. There's that powerful Eckhart Tolle quote mentioned, accept it as if you had chosen it.
Wow, that's a strong reframe in itself.
It really is. And once you accept, then you can reframe. The source suggests asking yourself a series of questions when you're facing something tough. What can I actually do about this? How can I look at this differently? What can I learn from it? How can this situation help me grow? And, maybe the kicker, will I even remember this specific problem in 20 years? The example given is being stuck by a flood in the Philippines. Instead of just despairing, asking these questions turns it into, well, potentially an adventure, a chance to connect, a lesson in resilience, and a story later on.
That example really clarifies it. It's your reaction that holds the power. No external situation can actually make you miserable unless you let it. So reframe problems as challenges, see failures as learning opportunities, and always ask, what can I learn from this?
Exactly. And the author makes the point that your problems are really only as big as the thoughts you invest in them. Focusing on a problem just makes it loom larger in your mind. If you could somehow just stop thinking about it entirely for your mind, it would cease to exist, which is why comparing ourselves to others is labeled stupid in the text. It's a thought pattern that just manufactures problems based on a perceived lack. Now, you can't always just stop thinking about something difficult, obviously, but you can consciously choose to spend less mental energy on it.
That's tough, though, because sometimes people seem to almost wrap their identity around their problems, even, playing the victim role.
Yeah, the source tackles this head on. It points out that sometimes, often unconsciously, we adopt our problems as part of who we are. That temporary attention or sympathy you might get from playing the victim. It's called an illusion that actually keeps you trapped in mediocrity. You have to become aware of when you're doing it. The core message is, you're only a victim in your own mind. It's time to reclaim your power.
And all these interpretations, these ideas about ourselves and the world, they're built on our belief system, aren't they?
Absolutely. A belief is fundamentally just something you've accepted as true. And they mostly come from how we interpreted past events, things we were told, things we experienced, both good and bad. Beliefs can form really quickly through intense emotions. Think phobias from a single scary event, or slowly, through simple repetition. That's the mechanism behind cults and propaganda, right? The source highlights that many of our beliefs aren't even ours originally. They're inherited, sometimes going back generations. The example of a scarcity mindset lingering long after the Great Depression really shows this powerfully. We have to examine our own beliefs. Are they still serving us now?
This whole process sounds like it's heavily influenced by the subconscious mind. The source calls it, intriguingly, Big Brother.
Yeah, it's acting like this overprotective guardian, trying to keep you safe based on those past associations, those interpretations. The advice in the source isn't to get angry at it, but to try and understand its motives, maybe collaborate with it to uncover the roots of problematic beliefs. It controls so much because it's a direct chain. Beliefs lead to thoughts. Thoughts generate emotions, and emotions drive our behaviors.
But this big brother isn't exactly the sharpest tool in the shed.
Well, the author adds that this part of the subconscious is also quite, let's say, unintelligent. It lacks critical thinking. It basically accepts and repeats whatever you feed it, which is why positive affirmations, done right, can actually work. Your mind is always listening to your internal dialogue, eavesdropping on how you talk to yourself. So you have to be incredibly careful with that self-talk.
Okay, so once we identify a limiting belief, maybe something like I'm not good enough, how does the source suggest we actually start dismantling it?
Right. First step, as we talked about, is pinpointing it. Look at the areas in your life where you feel stuck or dissatisfied: money, relationships, career, health. Ask yourself, why am I not getting the results I want here? What's stopping me? The source suggests, using the structure, I would like to, but insert the limiting belief to uncover them, like, I'd like a better job, but I'm not smart enough, or I'd like a relationship, but I don't have enough money. Then you dig deeper. If that belief were true, what would that really mean for me? The example used is Jane's anxiety about parties eventually revealing a core belief of, I'm undesirable.
Okay, so identify it, then what?
Then comes deconstruction. You have to realize the belief isn't true all the time, in every single situation. We often distort reality by comparing our weaknesses to other people's strengths. It's apples and oranges, right? We think others have it easy, but that's rarely the full picture. We generally have way more strengths and accomplishments than we give ourselves credit for, and sometimes, good friends or family are vital here, reminding us of the positive things we tend to overlook about ourselves.
That leads to a really practical exercise, the source suggests. When you feel that not good enough belief pop up, immediately make a list, write it down, reasons why you are good enough. Even small things count. And do it daily.
Yes, because your subconscious mind is constantly scanning for confirmation of whatever you focus on. So you have to actively train it to look for evidence of the positive, for reasons to be grateful, for proof that the limiting belief isn't the whole story. Another really powerful technique is to actively seek out information that contradicts your limiting beliefs. The source says even one solid piece of counter-evidence can significantly shake a deeply held belief. Hearing about someone who achieved their dream late in life, seeing genuinely happy long-married couples, learning about thriving vegan bodybuilders, meeting active centenarians, these examples just show that your belief isn't some universal truth, it's just your personal interpretation.
So basically, find people who have achieved what you want, or who are living in a way that proves your limitation isn't absolute. And don't just dismiss them as lucky or special. Instead, see them as proof of what's possible. Learn from them. Maybe emulate them. The core assumption the source encourages adopting is simple but profound. If other people can do it, maybe, just maybe, I can too.
Yeah, it's about opening up possibilities.
Okay, shifting gears slightly, but still very much in our internal world. The second principle is, your thoughts never define who you are and who you can become.
Right, and this one really goes against a deeply ingrained idea. Descartes famously said, I think, therefore I am. But the source pushes back, asking, if there was only thought, would you even be aware of it? It uses the analogy of a dreamer who doesn't realize they're dreaming.
It brings up that concept of the monkey mind, that endless stream of thoughts, often just commentary, often negative commentary. And as we just discussed, that internal self-talk is so crucial because your mind is always listening in.
But the fundamental realization here, the source argues, is that you are not the same thing as that stream of thoughts. We don't even fully understand where they come from, really. The source mentions things like intuitive readers, theories about tapping into some kind of universal consciousness of thoughts, and even touches on David R. Hawkins' idea about the ego's vanity in claiming thoughts as mine.
That's pretty out there for some, but the core point.
The core point is fascinating. Research suggests over 90% of your thoughts today are the exact same ones you had yesterday, often just repetitive, maybe useless patterns. The key insight is, you don't have to accept every thought as truth, and you certainly shouldn't let them dictate who you are or who you can become. The source warns pretty strongly that constantly identifying with and reacting to negative self-talk is a direct path to depression.
It distinguishes this from the ego, right? Like if you believe your identity is just the sum total of your thoughts, your personal story ego, then okay, maybe in that limited sense you are your thoughts. But many Enlightenment teachings talk about letting go of the ego, suggesting it's not your true essence. So the takeaway here is powerful. Don't let your thoughts define your whole identity. And definitely don't act as if every single thought is some absolute, unchangeable truth.
Exactly. And you can kind of test this idea yourself. The source throws down a challenge. Try to be depressed without thinking depressing thoughts. It's incredibly difficult, almost impossible. It implies that maybe your natural state, like an animal's perhaps, is actually closer to joy or contentment than depression. You don't have to listen to all the negative mental chatter. The source suggests if you simply stop engaging with those thoughts, stop giving them your attention, they'll start to lose their power and dissipate.
This connects perfectly to the power of the present moment, doesn't it? We can only truly live right here, right now. Any thinking about the past or the future is actually happening now. The past only exists as a memory in the present, and even then, it's a subjective interpretation. The future is built in the present through our expectations. So the way to loosen the grip of that personal story ego is to consciously focus on the present moment, observing your thoughts and emotions without getting tangled up in them, without identifying as them.
And tools like meditation and mindfulness are incredibly valuable for this. They train your awareness. They teach you to simply notice thoughts drift by without latching onto them. You can bring this awareness into simple daily stuff too. Washing dishes, going for a walk. Just observe the mental activity without judgment, without identifying with it. The source also suggests focusing intently on your body. It's very hard to get lost in thought when you're fully present in your physical sensations.
So meditation isn't really about stopping thoughts. It's more about training yourself to acknowledge them and then let them go. You get better at spotting those negative loops and choosing how to respond or not respond, becoming the master of your mind rather than a slave to its random chatter.
Yeah, and mindfulness practices in general have huge documented benefits, reducing stress, unhappiness, even procrastination, sometimes more effectively than conventional treatments. The source mentions Kelly McGonigal's work on surfing the urge, where just becoming aware of how cravings feel physically helps reduce their power. Observing negative emotions is way better than trying to repress them. Repression usually just pushes them underground where they cause more trouble later.
It's like that classic white bear experiment, right? Tell yourself not to think of a white bear.
That's all you can think about, exactly. Trying to suppress thoughts or emotions often just makes them stronger. Accepting them is actually the key.
So how do you do that? How do you accept a really negative thought?
The source gives a simple 3-step process once you notice one. First, just accept that you're having it, no resistance. Second, observe it like a curious scientist. Where do you feel it in your body? What's the actual physical sensation, the tension? Just notice it objectively. Third, ask yourself if you can consciously choose to let it go, to discard it. The more you practice this acceptance and observation, the less power those thoughts will hold over you.
And you can also actively counterbalance them, right? Like we discussed with beliefs.
Absolutely. Ask yourself if that negative thought is completely and universally true. Probably not. Then consciously find evidence that contradicts it. If the thought is, I'm not good enough, find specific areas where you are capable. I'm good enough to cook this meal. I'm good enough at my job that they pay me. This process systematically undermines the limiting belief or thought by showing it simply doesn't apply everywhere. It's not an absolute truth.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Building on this inner clarity then, the third principle looks outward. Your definition of success is all that matters.
Yeah, this is a big one. Everyone talks about wanting success, but the source really pushes you. Have you actually bothered to define what success means to you? Not just what society tells you. It uses that great Jim Rohn line. Success is not something you pursue. Success is something you become.
And the author shares their own definition.
They do. It's quite telling. Success is when you work on becoming the best you can become, do what you love, and give your best contribution to the world.
That's a world away from the usual benchmarks, isn't it? Fame, recognition, just piling up money. The source strongly cautions that chasing only those external markers often leads to feeling empty inside. You absolutely need your own definition, one that isn't just inherited or dictated by the media or your family or your friends.
Right. And the central question the source suggests, asking yourself to find that definition, is, how can I serve people while doing what I love? It's a fundamental shift, focusing on giving rather than just getting. The Bible quote, "Give and it shall be given unto you," is mentioned as reflecting this same principle.
The source touches briefly on the meaning of life, too. Are we born with a purpose, like dharma, or do we have to create meaning?
Yeah, the author kind of likes both ideas and says, you know what, it doesn't ultimately matter which one is technically true. What matters more are the characteristics of a truly great life purpose. The source outlines them. It should be timeless, universal, and genuinely inspiring. So inspiring that it doesn't feel like work. It unleashes your potential, brings deep fulfillment. And critically, it should transcend your ego. It needs to come from love and contribution, not from fear or lack, or just wanting to look good.
The source gives some really powerful questions to help pinpoint your own purpose, like how can I leverage my problems? How can I give meaning to the challenges or suffering I've faced? The examples of Nick Vujicic, born without limbs, or Viktor Frankl finding meaning even in a concentration camp, they show purpose found through adversity.
Another great question. How can I get paid to do what I love? The word enthusiasm, the source reminds us, literally means God within. You really can't achieve exceptional success without genuinely loving what you do. That passion is what fuels you through the inevitable setbacks.
And how can I better serve? Focusing on creating value for society, not just taking from it. Plus those classic hypotheticals. If you had all the money and time in the world, what would you do? Or flip it, what would you actually pay to be able to do?
And finally, there's Steve Pavlina's intense method mentioned. Sitting down and just writing the question, what is my life purpose?
Yeah.
Over and over again without stopping until something profound breaks through, maybe even makes you cry. It's a way to try and bypass the conscious mind's easy answers.
Wow, that's intense. And through all this searching, the source reminds us.
Don't lose sight of maybe the only thing that truly matters in the end, just being happy.
Right. So clarifying your own definition of success grounded in service, love, personal growth is presented as absolutely foundational for a fulfilling life.
Which leads us logically to the fourth principle, and this might be the toughest one for a lot of people. You are responsible for everything in your life.
That's a stark statement. The source frames it as this fundamental choice. Are you going to be a victim of your circumstances or the creator of your life? It insists that everything is ultimately a matter of choice and that you are responsible for every single area. Jim Rohn's quote feels highly relevant here. Either you design your own life plan or you risk falling into someone else's plan for you. And the source adds, they probably haven't planned much for you anyway.
Yeah, it explains that every time you refuse to take responsibility, you're essentially giving your power away. You're handing it over to circumstances or other people or just vague fate. Playing the victim isn't just a passive mindset, it's an active act of disempowerment. It limits your ability to change anything. It's basically refusing to acknowledge that you have any control or even that there are possibilities available to you.
Admitting this is really hard, though. It means telling the truth, even when it makes you look bad. Blaming others is always easier in the moment. It protects the ego, gives a false sense of relief. But the source is really firm. Blaming is one of the biggest barriers to personal growth there is, period.
So the source urges you to make a conscious commitment. Commit to taking full responsibility, even if you don't fully believe you were responsible at first. Taking that stance, taking extra responsibility, paradoxically opens your eyes to all the possibilities for growth and action. It's not about self-blame, that's just another form of self-sabotage. It's about accepting the reality of the situation as it is, and then realizing that within that reality, you always have some power, some choice about how you respond or what you do next.
But what about genuine tragedies? Events completely outside our control. Are we really responsible for absolutely everything, even those?
That's a crucial distinction the source makes. You are not responsible for the event itself if it was truly external. You're responsible for your reaction to it. When faced with deep hardship, you have a choice. You can try to find meaning within the suffering, or you can dwell on revenge or bitterness. The source describes revenge as purely an ego game, inherently destructive, the absolute opposite of peace, and ultimately utterly unfulfilling.
It makes me think of Martin Luther King Jr.'s words, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that."
Exactly. And the source frames forgiveness in a similar light. It's not just being nice to someone else, it's presented as the only way to achieve peace within yourself. It's a declaration of love to yourself, a non-negotiable part of committing to your own happiness.
So whatever happens, the fundamental question always comes back to, okay, what are you going to do about it? Will you let it break you, or will you use it to build strength, wisdom, meaning? The source insists only you can make that decision. Nobody is coming to save you. You have to save yourself by taking responsibility. Don't just live life by default. Actively create it.
Yeah, and the source then outlines several key areas where embracing this full responsibility is absolutely vital for building that created life. It starts with accepting reality. Just being honest with yourself about what is. That's the absolute prerequisite for any meaningful change. Awareness first. Then your attitude. This is huge. The source uses Earl Nightingale's analogy of the stove. You got to put the fuel in first if you want heat. You get to choose your attitude every day. Don't just be a chameleon reacting to whatever environment you're in. If someone insults or disrespects you, the source says, look, that's their problem, likely rooted in their own issues. Don't take it personally. Reacting just gives your power away to them. Decide each morning what attitude you're bringing to the world. Zig Ziglar's quote is used. Your attitude, not your aptitude, will determine your altitude.
Okay, attitude, what else?
Responsibility for your own happiness. This is critical. The source cites Sandra Lyubomirsky's research suggesting that while genes and circumstances play a role, a huge chunk, like 40% of your happiness, is determined by your conscious thoughts and actions. Happiness comes from within. External stuff, getting material things, even hitting a big goal might bring temporary elation, sure, but it won't transform your life or guarantee lasting happiness if your underlying mindset is stuck in negativity or lack. Goals are most powerful when they help you become the person you want to be. The real growth happens in the process of striving.
So happiness isn't just something that happens to you.
Not according to this source. It requires active cultivation. And gratitude is presented as a key practice for that, but it needs conscious effort. It's about deliberately shifting your focus from what you lack to what you have. Making a regular list of things you're grateful for, maybe listening to uplifting music to really feel the emotion, focusing on non-material things, relationships, freedom, your health, nature things, far more valuable than possessions. And being grateful for who you are, focusing on your qualities and strengths. It's like training your subconscious, again, shifting from scarcity to abundance. Ultimately, you are responsible for cultivating your own happiness.
What about relationships? We're not solely responsible there, are we?
No, you share responsibility when things go wrong. It's important to study relationship dynamics, maybe understand gender psychology differences mentioned in the source, and actively nurture the connection it takes, effort from both sides. Crucially, the source emphasizes communicating your needs and feelings clearly. Failing to do that builds resentment, which is called a relationship killer. You also need to be clear on your own values and expectations. We're naturally drawn to people with similar core values. Don't waste energy trying to change your partner's fundamental values or abandoning your own. A story shared about a Japanese man whose marriage suffered precisely because of this lack of communication about values. Okay, that makes sense. Shared responsibility, clear communication. Right. Then there's responsibility for your emotions. They're created by your mind's interpretation of events. They don't exist as some objective force out there. You have a choice in how you react. Stress, for instance, isn't just the situation itself, but your reaction to it. The source says reacting emotionally, especially to something like an insult, just gives your power away to the other person, makes them more important. It often reveals your own insecurity. Epictetus is quoted again, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them." He also said an insult exists in your judgment, not in the person speaking.
So how do you not react when someone really pushes your buttons?
Well, the author shares a personal technique. First, acknowledge the feeling physically. Second, focus intently on the physical sensation to create a bit of distance. Third, analyze why you're feeling it, what triggered it. Fourth, reframe the situation. Maybe see the other person as having problems. Feel pity instead of anger. And fifth, consciously decide your peace of mind is too valuable to react. If something offends you deeply, ask why. Maybe it touched on a subconscious belief you hold about yourself. Like being called lazy only stings if a tiny part of you secretly fears it might be true.
Interesting. What other areas?
Your career. The source brings in Brian Tracy's idea. See yourself as self-employed, the president of your own personal service corporation, even if you work for someone else. You are responsible for creating value, for making yourselves more valuable through continuous learning, improving skills, communication. Your company might offer opportunities, but your growth is ultimately your job. Your time is another big one. Entirely your responsibility. Tim Ferriss is quoted, quote, "Being busy is most often used as a guise for avoiding the few critically important but uncomfortable actions. Being busy is a form of laziness, lazy thinking, and indiscriminate action." Are you controlling your time or just letting others steal it with requests and distractions? Your time is incredibly precious. Most people, the source argues, waste chunks of it on things that don't genuinely matter. You decide how to use your time. It's a conscious choice every day.
Which leads directly to the last point in this section.
Taking responsibility means learning to say no. Consciously ask yourself, is this request really the best use of my limited time given my priorities? Learning to say no, especially when something isn't aligned with your core values or important goals, is essential self-management.
Okay, so taking responsibility, directing our focus. This builds perfectly into the fifth and final principle, which is all about action. You can turn your dreams into goals with the power of goal setting.
Exactly. This is where the vision starts to become tangible, right? Where the rubber meets the road. The source quotes Napoleon Hill's classic line, A goal is a dream with a deadline. And David J. Schwartz adds that nothing significant really happens until a goal is established. Without goals, people just sort of wander aimlessly.
It sounds simple, but the source really emphasizes it.
Oh yeah. The source calls setting goals and, crucially, writing them down one of the most significant gifts you can give yourself. It's how you tap into that subconscious goal-seeking mechanism we talked about earlier. It clarifies exactly what target you want that mechanism to aim for, and yet, surprisingly few people actually do this consistently.
So why is it so powerful? The source gives 5 main reasons,
It
right?
does. First, it gives clear direction to your subconscious mind. Maxwell Maltz called it a mechanical goal-seeking device, inherently teleological, meaning it operates based on goals. You feed it a clear target, and its automatic guidance system starts working behind the scenes to take you there.
Okay, so it activates that inner GPS.
Pretty much. Second, it empowers you. By setting goals, you're actively choosing to be the creator of your life, making conscious decisions instead of just drifting. You realize the power you actually have within you to shape your future. It significantly builds self-esteem. Nathaniel Branden's work on self-esteem psychology is mentioned. People with high self-esteem tend to seek challenging goals, and the very act of reaching those goals, especially ones that stretch you, powerfully nurtures and reinforces that self-esteem. If you struggle with low self-esteem, the source advises starting with small, achievable goals just to build that positive momentum.
That makes sense. 4th reason.
It actually changes your present reality. David Allen's point is brought in here. The real value isn't just the future achievement, but how having the goal changes your perception and actions today. It forces you to look for new opportunities, learn new skills, and actively start overcoming those limiting beliefs we discussed earlier.
And 5th, goals can literally improve your health.
Yeah, David J. Schwartz observed that no medicine is as potent as having a strong desire to accomplish something meaningful. Exciting goals give your life purpose, and that contributes to longevity. The source mentions Dan Bjertner's Blue Zones research areas with the longest lifespans, where having a strong sense of life purpose is a common characteristic among centenarians. There's even a moving example of a mother whose goal of seeing her son graduate gave her the will to live significantly longer than doctors expected.
Okay, the benefits are clear. So how do we actually do it effectively? How do we set goals we'll actually achieve?
The fundamental first step, quoting Brian Tracy, is simple but profound. Think on paper. Successful people don't just think, they think with a pen in hand. Writing your goals down makes them concrete. It pulls them out of the fuzzy realm of abstract daydreaming, which the source calls an illusion, and grounds them in the physical world.
All right, so first practical step for anyone listening, grab a pen and paper right now. Give yourself permission to just write down all the goals you'd pursue if you knew you couldn't fail. Don't censor yourself. What do you really want? Your dream life, the contribution you want to make. Just let your imagination run wild on the page.
Okay, once you have that list, maybe pick the one goal that excites you the most right now. Then, and this is key, immediately start asking how. How can I achieve this? Asking how questions is incredibly powerful because it assumes possibility. It kickstarts your brain into problem-solving and brainstorming mode. Then, break that big goal down into smaller, manageable chunks. Set a realistic deadline for each step and for the overall goal. And then comes the non-negotiable part. Work at it, somehow, every single day. It might not be easy, but it is possible.
And specificity is absolutely crucial here, isn't it? Vague goals lead to vague results.
Totally. Robin Sharma is quoted, "Know what you want. Clarity is power. Vague goals promote vague results." Saying, I want to study English is, well, it's vague. Make it specific. I will have a 1-hour conversation with John about Asian travel by the end of June. If it's about money, assign an exact amount. $10,000 per month by December 31st next year. Decide on a specific day you'll achieve it. You need to make goals measurable so you can track progress, stay accountable, and make it feel real and tangible.
Should the goals be challenging?
Yes, the source suggests choosing a goal that challenges you, one that pushes you slightly out of your comfort zone. The satisfaction and self-esteem boost from achieving something difficult is huge. But don't make it so overwhelmingly ambitious that you just lose motivation or feel defeated if you don't hit it perfectly. And remember, don't compare your goals or your progress to anyone else's. Just celebrate your own small victories that represent a step forward for you. Highly ambitious goals, though, the source notes, often do require massive action.
And connecting back to purpose, you need to know why the goal matters.
Absolutely. Write down why this goal is truly important to you. Jim Rohn's famous line comes up again. When the why gets stronger, the how gets easier. You have to genuinely enjoy the process, the journey towards the goal. The motivation needs to be intrinsic. It has to matter to you, not just because of external pressure or validation. The author repeats, goal achievement itself doesn't guarantee happiness. The path you take should feel meaningful and, ideally, enjoyable.
What about setting yourself up for success? The environment.
The source adds practical advice here. Recognize you have limited willpower. So set up your environment to support your goals. If you want to go vegetarian, have recipes ready, stock the fridge with the right ingredients, maybe join an association. Vasant Lad is quoted suggesting if you want to be thinner, spend time with thin people. Their habits and environment will influence you. Make the beneficial choices easy and accessible, like keeping healthy snacks right there on your desk instead of junk food.
And sharing your goals. Does that help?
It can be a powerful tool for accountability. Telling colleagues at work, announcing it to your family, it adds a layer of social pressure. The source does note, though, that if you feel deeply uncomfortable sharing a goal, it might be a sign it's too ambitious, or maybe deep down you don't genuinely want it. You might need to revisit or modify it.
Are goals set in stone once you write them down?
Not at all. Goals can and should change as you learn, grow, and gain new perspectives. Be flexible. If a goal clearly isn't relevant or exciting anymore, just drop it. Goals are tools meant to help you, not become rigid masters, and watch your language when talking about them. Use strong, committed words like, I will when I achieve, I know I will, instead of weak, hesitant language like, I'll try, or maybe. Your words help shape your internal reality.
It's also vital to anticipate setbacks, right? Things rarely go perfectly smoothly.
Oh, definitely. We tend to be overly optimistic about how long things will take or how hard they'll be. Thomas Watson, IBM's founder, is quoted, "The fastest way to succeed is to double your failure rate." See setbacks not as signs you should quit, but as an expected, normal part of the process. Mentally prepare for them. Maybe even decide beforehand how you'll react when things inevitably go wrong. The author shares their own stories of almost giving up on projects due to problems, only realizing later that navigating those failures was key. Setbacks test how much you really want it.
And if the goal is about breaking a habit?
Then, the source strongly advises avoiding difficult situations that trigger the unwanted behavior. If you're trying to lose weight or quit smoking, identify those specific risky situations. Maybe it's coffee breaks, always paired with cigarettes, or certain friends and places that tempt you. Develop a concrete strategy to avoid those triggers entirely.
Okay, so finally, the source suggests creating a comprehensive list of goals.
Yes, covering all significant areas of your life. Don't just focus on career and money. Include health, relationships, personal growth, hobbies, contribution. A good goal list, according to the source, covers all areas, has measurable goals with deadlines, is phrased positively, I am, I will, and this is key. You should review it daily. That daily review keeps your goals fresh in your mind and constantly signals your subconscious, goal-seeking mechanism what to work on.
But no pressure to achieve all of them.
Exactly. The source reiterates, you don't need to achieve every single goal on the list. Don't feel trapped, especially if you shared them publicly. Be flexible, trust your intuition about what feels right now, and don't hesitate to drop goals that are no longer serving you. They're there to help you build the life you want.
Wow. Okay, so we've journeyed through these 5 really powerful principles from the source. Understanding our constructed reality, realizing we are not our thoughts, defining our own success, embracing total responsibility, and leveraging the power of goal setting to turn dreams into action. That's a lot.
It is. And what really ties so many of these seemingly disparate ideas together is the fundamental concept of assumptions. This is a key theme the author explored further in a preview mentioned in the source material we looked at. These 5 principles, fundamentally, they challenge the deep-seated assumptions we hold about what's possible for us, about who we truly are, about how success actually works, about where responsibility lies, and about the real extent of our own potential.
The preview used that really vivid analogy, didn't it? The chained elephant. As a baby, it was tied by a small chain it couldn't break. But as it grew into this powerful adult, it never even tried to break free because it was conditioned by that early assumption. The chain is unbreakable. And the point is, we often operate far, far below our true potential because of similar self-imposed limiting assumptions. These assumptions, whether we're conscious of them or not, determine the choices we make every single day. The source emphasizes that changing just a few core assumptions, shifting a few simple daily habits, making slightly different decisions consistently, that can lead to dramatic life-altering change over time. It echoes that famous Henry Ford line, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right.
Yeah, and one single false assumption, like the story mentioned in the preview about Viktor Serebryakov believing he was a dunce just because his teachers labeled him that way as a child, that can have profound, lifelong consequences until that assumption is finally questioned and challenged. It really highlights how critical it is to actively examine the core beliefs you hold about yourself and the world.
The source describes these assumptions almost like filters we place over our perception. They color our experiences, they limit what we even see as possible, kind of blocking our inner light and potential. The more filters we add, I'm too old, I'm not smart enough, I'm too shy, that's just not realistic for someone like me, the narrower our view becomes and the smaller our potential feels. Removing these filters means letting go of those limiting assumptions. It's not necessarily about blindly believing everything is possible, but more about consciously choosing not to disbelieve anything that isn't definitively impossible. It's about adopting that empowering assumption we talked about. If someone else achieved this, the possibility exists, maybe I can explore it too. And society, of course, adds its own layers of filters and assumptions about what's normal or achievable.
And that really leaves us, and you listening, with the most important question about the assumptions you currently hold. Are they genuinely serving you? Are they moving you towards your vision of a meaningful life? Or are they quietly working against you, keeping you chained like that elephant? It's about consciously choosing to replace disempowering assumptions with empowering ones. Not necessarily because the new ones are somehow definitively more accurate in some objective sense, but simply because they enable you to live a better, more fulfilling, and more aligned life.
Thanks for joining us in this episode of Deep Dialogues. If this conversation sparked a thought, a question, or even just a pause, then it did its job. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave us a thought in the comments. Until next time, stay curious, stay thoughtful, stay in sync.